My approach to the drum kit is twofold. One, I always try and play as musically as I can. And number two, I try and approach the kit as a microcosmic orchestra within itself. I utilize the concept of ostinato, which is a repeated musical phrase, quite a bit in this video. Basically, what I do is I designate one of my limbs or one or more of my limbs to hold on an ostinato pattern, and that becomes my accompaniment, and then I solo against that using the remaining limb or limbs. And in that way I can accompany myself and make some interesting music, hopefully. It's also really my pleasure to be able to play drum music, solo drum music, for drummers who understand and appreciate this. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to, hear on the radio, but it can open up doors for the commercial drummer as well as students to just broaden their horizons a little bit and hopefully expand and evolve our use of the modern large drum kit. This section now I want to talk about deals with two-part contrapuntal melodies split between the hands around the tom-toms. And what I was doing was rolling and then moving my left hand from the second tom to the snare drum to the third tom to the snare drum to the second tom, cycling that back and forth as an ostinato. And then on my right hand I was playing the the offbeats of that with my right hand on a floor tom, which simulated bass notes, and I was able to move this bass note around and to give an implication of harmonic movement, and also to give an implication of two-part contrapuntal melodies. Where this is happening, it's got its own direction, cycling back and forth. This moves up, then it moves up again, it moves down. And I think that's it's just something that I experimented with and found that was an interesting thing to do. The drummer's long tone is the roll, and by splitting this roll up between two different sound sources, we have these harmonic and melodic implications. There's also polyrhythmic implications there, because if I'm doing 2 notes per drum with this hand, and I do, say, 3 notes per drum, as I was doing in the improvisational section, then we have sort of a 2 against 3 or a 3 against 4 type of polyrhythm going on as well. So this is a fascinating area which I'm writing a book about, and the book is basically going to mathematically go through all the permutations of 1, 2, 3, and 4 note melodies, ascending, descending, or cycling back and forth, with 1, 2, 3, or 4 hits per drum or note, and against the same thing in the other hand. And then we're going to also develop the ability to have the right hand on the beat while doing this, and the left hand off the beat, or the left hand on the beat and the right hand off the beat, so that we can bring out or accentuate whatever we want to from the right side of the kit to the left side of the kit, and hopefully really expand the possibilities of melody and harmony in modern drum set playing. Now this next section is where things start to get really interesting. This is basically an ostinato that I did on my first video for DCI called Solo Drums. And it's a 3/8 ostinato where my left foot on the spokes hi-hat is playing eighth notes, and my right foot is playing 1, 2, 3, 1, or actually 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, with, on the right bass drum. And on top of that, I've been able to superimpose the idea of playing the last 3/16 notes of a quarter note polyrhythmically on top of this, so that my left hand is playing a 3/4 phrase where I'm playing the last 3/16 notes on one tom, then on the next tom, then on the next tom, having this da 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 1 eana, 2 eana, 3 eana, 1 eana, 2 eana, 3 eana over this 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So we have sort of a superimposition of a 3/4 on top of a 3/8 or 6/8, however you want to count it. Now, how did I do this? I don't know. It's just that, you know, what happens is I've gotten so used to playing this last 3/16 notes ostinato that I found I was easily able to just superimpose it on top of this other 3/8 ostinato. And then to solo against that with my right hand, I just did the same old concept, which is to go through all the basic mathematical permutations of notes, you know, 1, 2, and 3 note groupings of 16th notes and 8th notes, things like that, with my right hand. And also to employ what we talked about on melodic drumming in the ostinato part 1, which deals with melodic tom playing, because all the patterns melodically that I was explaining there could also be played with one hand on the drums. Obviously not as fast, but you know, you can also play melodies with just one hand at a time. So, having this set up with these two ostinatos superimposed on each other, I was then free to use my right hand to solo, and that's what I did. Then I stopped that and did some two-hand soloing on top of the 3/8 one to finish off. Now, in the next solo, we have sort of an Afro 6/8 or triplet-based rhythm that is somewhat based on an African rhythm called the bembe. I don't know, I've never really studied African music, and I'm not really an expert on Latin music, but I figure out these things from the standpoint of a motif, you know. I have a triplet motif. This particular ostinato deals with splitting my left foot again so that my left foot is between the hi-hat and the left bass drum, and it can play both of those instruments simultaneously. And what I did is I played quarter notes with my left foot, and then I played the last two beats of the triplet with my right foot. So we had this left, right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right ostinato. Now, that set up my basic groove. And then the bembe part came in, or a bembe variation, when I started to superimpose a left-hand ostinato on top of that. What I did was I started to play the first two notes of a triplet, a two-note pattern, with my left hand on my first and second tom. So we had this do-do, 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 kind of rhythm going on. And then I was able to solo against that with my right hand. Now, once again, the idea is always the same. You go through the basic triplet permutations, and then you have the freedom to do this. Then it gets a little bit more complex and interesting. We move into the next section of this where I change and I start to do a polyrhythmic, sort of a 4 over 3 rhythm over the 6/8, where I'm playing 3/8 notes and then resting for 1/8 note. So we have this da 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 over the pulse. Now this rhythm, I'm told, is an Abacois rhythm. Once again, my good friend Bruno Palmieri, who is a French journalist for a drum magazine, he has studied a lot of these things, and after I make up patterns not knowing really where their roots are, he'll later say, well, this is based from this, or this is based from that, and that's what he tells me. So I have then this polyrhythmic 4 over the 3 ostinato going on, and I solo against that with my right hand. And once again, I go through the basic patterns, but this time there's a bit of a switch. Because I'm thinking in terms of a polyrhythm, I can think from the perspective of the triplet groove, the 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, or I can think in terms of the 4 over 3 groove, which is da 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 da. So basically, if I think in either one of those frameworks. I can do 16th note type permutations when I'm thinking about the 4/3 perspective, or thinking from the 4/3 perspective, or I can do the triplet grooves when I'm thinking of the 3 with the 4/3 perspective. And that will give me, so doing both of those permutations from both of those perspectives gives me the ability to solo with this sort of polyrhythmic episode going on between 3 of my limbs. Okay? So that's what I did in that. The thing, I think that it was a very natural thing for me to do this because, like I said, I've been doing some of these ostinatos now for several years, and I've been working with polyrhythms for several years, and to kind of combine the two and float an ostinato that's in a polyrhythm from what my other ostinato is and play off in that rhythm is it's just become a natural thing for me, as it will for you too, if you're so inclined to do these sorts of exercises. For me, it's interesting because it's like slipping into a parallel universe where there's another time going on, and in that time, or in that groove, which is a polyrhythm from the basic groove I'm holding down, I'm able to play in 4/4 or 3/4 or 6/8 or whatever in that tempo. And so it really gets fun and it really gets interesting. And as I always say, I allow myself the freedom of just going out and getting lost in that parallel time zone. And then when I feel the musical phrase is ended, I just let it go and slip back into the time zone that I'm actually keeping down. So I'm not really thinking in terms of how many bars I have to do of whatever, 5, in order to come out on 1 if I'm in a 4-bar phrase. I just allow myself the ability to, give myself the freedom to just play more stream of consciousness. Okay, now I'm going to be demonstrating some of this 2-part contrapuntal melodic playing between the 2 tom-toms. And I think the best way to approach this is to begin with the concept of having a high or a low pedal point. Now, a pedal point in music is a tone that's held, and other instrumentalists or other melody lines are played over this tone. Or if it's a high pedal point, they're played under this tone. So you could imagine maybe a trumpet holding a long note while a saxophone or something plays a melodic line that harmonically fits with this note that the trumpet player is playing. Now that's the same thing we're going to be doing on the drums. So to begin with, let's say we're going to use a low pedal point. So that means I'm going to be rolling, splitting my hands between 2 tom-toms. My right hand is going to be on the lowest tom-tom, and then I'm going to play melodic patterns with my left hand, moving my left hand around the various other tom-toms, using 1, 2, or 3, or 4 beats per tom to give the melody a rhythm. And I'm going to be playing the off beats with my right hand on this low floor tom. So we've got a pedal tone being held on the floor tom and a melody being played against it with the left hand. Then you can reverse that by holding the left hand off the beats with the, on the high tom on the left hand side, and then moving the right hand in groups of 1, 2, 3, or 4 notes per tom, and making a melody that would go underneath this high pitch. Then, ultimately, we can move both hands, and when we were talking about two-part counterpoint, we have these options to us, which I try to utilize and just keep in mind. And I'm sort of just throwing this out as a concept because I can't really get into completely specific aspects of this in the confines of this video. But as I said, I've got a book coming out that will deal with a lot of the mathematical permutations of this concept and should give you the ability to improvise two independent melody lines simultaneously. When we're dealing with two-part melodic counterpoint, we have these options at our disposal. There's several different kinds of movements that are at our disposal. We have similar movement, which is both hands may be moving down, or both voices moving down, but perhaps not parallel. We have parallel movement, which is both voices moving down or up in the same direction, but keeping the same interval. So if I'm on toms 1 and 3, if I move down in parallel motion, I'm going to go to 2 and 4, and then 3 and 5. So I'm keeping the same interval of one drum between the two that I'm playing on, and that's going to move up or down. That's called parallel motion. Similar motion might be I move up one drum with my right hand and up 2 drums with my left hand. Now, the other motion we have is contrary motion, and that's where the hands are moving in opposite directions. So I might start in the center of my kit, say on toms, let's say 3 and 4. And my right hand would move down to tom 4 and 5, or 5 and 6. My left hand would move up to tom 2 and 1. So I have this contrary motion. And I can do the opposite of that. If I start on my highest and lowest floor tom and move my hands more towards the center of my body, I have contrary motion going that way. Now, the other and final thing is what's called oblique motion, and that's where one hand stays the same and the other hand moves. So we have a lot of different options of that. You can have the right hand staying the same and the left hand moving up, and the right hand staying the same and the left hand moving down, and vice versa. The left hand staying the same, the right hand moving up, or the right hand moving down. And that gives you all the basic types of motion that we can have when we're dealing with two-part intervallic and contrapuntal playing. This next section was a linear funk pattern where I was playing in a linear melodic style, breaking up the 16th note rhythms between all four of my limbs in a sequential way. Now, I've done this before on my previous DCI video, but this time I wanted to use it basically as a format in order to explore the possibilities of hand-foot overlaps as ideas for fills. Now, a hand-foot overlap is something where you play a certain amount of notes with your hands and a certain amount of notes with your feet, but some or one of them overlap. And this gives the implication of two distinct rhythms happening that are sometimes together and sometimes apart. And it's an interesting way of approaching this because, at least to me right now, I don't have the ability to think completely in terms of two independent rhythms unless I actually work from a score and work something like that out. But I do, from playing rudiments that deal with flams, have this ability to superimpose one or two notes on each other, and in just twisting some of these patterns we can come up with a lot of interesting ideas to give the illusion of two separate rhythms being played at the same time. So that's what I did in this section. And then later on I went into sort of a very fast double time feel just to bring it to a climatic ending. Now we're going to demonstrate some hand-foot overlaps. And the most basic of these that we can start with is based on a Swiss triplet. I'm going to start with playing my right hand on the snare drum in unison with my right foot on the bass drum. My right foot is going to play the first two beats of the triplet. My hands are going to play the first and the third beat of the triplet, so that we have this situation where there's two notes being played with my hands, two notes being played with my feet, and one of them overlaps to kind of give the implication of two independent rhythms happening simultaneously. Now this next pattern that I'm going to demonstrate is a four-note pattern. And it basically has three notes in the hand, which are the first three beats of a four-note grouping, and then three beats with the right foot, which are the last three beats of a four-note grouping. So my hands are going to be going right hand, then left hand with the right foot simultaneously, right hand with the right foot simultaneously, and then only my right foot. So we have basically the first three notes of a four-note pattern with the hands, the second three notes of a four-note pattern with the feet, and these two center ones overlap. The next thing I'm going to demonstrate is a group of, it's a five-note pattern. And this deals with three notes with the hands and three notes with my right foot. But one of the notes overlaps. So I'll be going right, left, right, and on this second right, I'll begin with my foot simultaneously, and then be doing three notes with my right foot to make up a five-note pattern. And the center note of the five notes, the hands and the feet overlap. This time we're going to do the same exact pattern, but we're going to invert it. So I'm going to start with 3 beats with my foot, and then overlap starting on the 3rd foot beat with 3 beats with my hands to make a 5-note pattern where the center note overlaps. Now we're going to play a 6-note pattern. Now this one is going to have 3 beats with the hands, and the 3rd beat of the hands is where we're going to start our foot beat, so we have the overlap there, and then I'm going to do 4 beats with my right foot. So I have 3 with the hands, 4 with the feet. They overlap, so we have 3 with the hands and 4 with the feet, and this one overlaps to make a 6-note pattern. This examples 2 6-beat phrases that combine to make an interesting pattern. This next example is a 7-beat phrase that's phrased 4 plus 3, and the overlap is on the 1 of the 4 and the 1 of the 3. This next example is 2 7-beat phrases which combine to make an interesting pattern. This next phrase is a 9-beat pattern, which deals with 3 beats with the hands, 3 beats with the feet, 3 beats with the hands, and then 3 beats with the feet. And they all overlap. These phrases by no means were very scientific or gave you all the permutations that you could come up with in terms of combining hand and foot overlaps, but they're some of my favorite phrases, and I played some of these in the solo. And you know, you can kind of like make up your own from there if the concept appeals to you. This next solo, I started out with an ostinato that my friend Bruno again has nicknamed the Clockwork Ostinato. It's basically a 16th note oriented ostinato where I play the first two 16th notes with my left hand on the snare drum and the last two 16th notes with my right foot on the bass drum. So we have this da-da-doo-doo, 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 da-da-doo-doo kind of a theme. And my left foot is playing quarter notes on the hi-hat. So that's the basic ostinato. But what happened one time when I was doing this was this little melody came out, which was actually kind of a pleasing little melody. So I play this melody, and then I develop it a little bit, and it's sort of a little song. Just a little melodic interlude more than a big showcase for any radical technique. But the idea of crossing from the left hand to the right foot in terms of that's the ostinato that's held presents some problems because a lot of times we want to go with the, if we're playing something with our right hand, we want to follow it with the right foot. If we're playing something with our right foot, we want to follow it with the right hand because we're sort of divided, right and left. Our orientation is that way. So this is a good thing because it frees up somewhat some independence between the right hand and the right foot. Now, later on in this solo, after soloing against that with my right hand, I incorporated my right hand as part of the ostinato. So my right hand on a floor tom was playing the first two 16th notes, and then my right foot the last two 16th notes. And I was free then to solo with my left hand against that. And that gives me the ability to play some upper, higher pitched tom melodies and utilize some of the things on the left side of my kit which have all the higher notes. And without crossing my hand over. And also it's a texture change, and it gives a certain amount of release from the relentless snare drum, and has sort of a harmonic change implication as well. So it's almost like a bridge in song form. We're going along on one level, and then we sort of change key and go to the bridge and then go back. And at the end of that, I return to the theme and sort of fade it out. The next section that I played is basically a Mozambique type feel, or bayao. I'm not really sure, because as I said before, I don't really study specific Latin rhythms, and I'm not really an expert on that. But this is a situation where my feet are doing a basic, both of my feet are playing in unison. My right foot on the right bass drum, and my left foot on the spokes hi-hat. And I'm playing basically two dotted quarter notes and a quarter note to make sort of this dum 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 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 type of rhythm. Then with my left hand on the spokes hi-hat, I'm filling in the in-between beats. So if I'm playing 1 with my feet, I'm playing 2 and 3 with my left hand, and then 4 with my feet, 5 and 6 with my left hand, and then 7 with my feet, and 8 with my left hand. So we have this open and closed sort of rhythm that almost reminds me of what a triangle player would play in some Brazilian music. And that's our basic ostinato. Once again, you go through the basic permutations and find out how each rhythm lies against this particular rhythm that you're holding, and then you have the ability to solo freely against that. So because this is a very Latinish feel, I ended up playing very Latin-influenced rhythms on top of it, polyrhythms and melodies and just phrases and all. Okay, next we have an etude, which I threw in as one movement of this solo, but it's really an etude. An etude is just a fancy French word for study, okay? So this is a study for being able to play between your hands and your feet with double bass. What I do is I start out playing 2 beats with my hands on the lower 2 floor toms, and because my right hand is on the lower drum, my left hand is on the higher drum, I've got this low to high melody, and I imitate that with my feet. Because my right bass drum is tuned lower than my left bass drum, I've got low to high answering that in the bass drums. So the concept of this perpetual motion etude was to constantly keep 16th notes going, and to add, when I start out with just 2 beats with the hands, to add from 2 beats with my feet, add to 4 beats with my feet, and then to 6 beats with my feet. So each time I'm adding something, I'm changing the time signature and somewhat changing the texture, and you get this sort of minimalist cycling of textures and time signatures, which shift, and along with the dynamics, and it really creates sort of an interesting hypnotic effect. And because it's non-stop, that's why I called it the perpetual motion etude. Now, the next step then, after you've gotten to the point where you have 6 beats with your feet, you move up a drum and you go, what would it be? Tom 6, Tom 5, and then Tom 7 and Tom 6. So I've got this da-di-da-dum, da-di-da-dum, da-di-da-dum thing with 4 notes going, and against 2 beats with my feet. Then I bring it to 4 beats with my feet. Then I bring it to 6 beats with my feet. And I just keep adding toms, right, which are going to add notes, and then going back to 2 beats with my feet, and then adding the double beats with my feet, so that I keep getting this growing, shifting time signature thing happening, and each one of the phrases gets longer and starts to sweep more and more across my tom-toms, to the point where I reach I'm going all the way from my first tom-toms to my last tom-toms. And when I've reached that point, if I've gotten all the way up to 6 beats with my feet between one of those full range swings around the toms, then that's the end of the etude, and I stop. Now, there's also a reverse perpetual motion etude, which is a lot harder to do, and I'm afraid I click my sticks a lot, and I'm not really very good at leading with my left hand or my left foot, but that's why I practice that. And had I had more time and maybe could take a few takes on it, I would have done it on this video, but we didn't. But that would be the exact opposite, an inversion of what you do with your hands. So you're going right-left, so that the notes are going, you're going left-right with the hands, so you have a high to low phrase, and then because my left bass drum is tuned higher, I would be going high to low with the answer with my feet. So you're going left-right, left-right, and then left-right, left-right. So, and you work backwards the opposite way around, and that's fairly challenging, and maybe I'll get that together for the next video. But I suggest that you, if you do want to practice this sort of thing, that you basically try and reverse it as well. Now, the next thing. The final segment that I played in this solo is a Latin-influenced phrase, which is based on a theme that Mark Isham had written. He used it in a movie that I played the drums on, and I just used that as a basis to improvise. When I started to play this theme, I started to add, the theme is in 4/4, and I started to add a bass drum motif that was in 3/8 underneath this 4/4. So I had this sort of built-in 2 against 3 type polyrhythm, where my left foot, split again between the left bass drum and the hi-hat, is playing quarter notes, and then my right foot is playing 3/8 on the gong bass drum. So I have this 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3, like 3 against 2 type rhythm. Now that's the ostinato, and then on top of that I try and play phrases that are basically 4/4 oriented to keep this sort of shifting polyrhythmic feel. And in between the phrases that I improvise, I refer back to the theme from time to time, or variations on the theme. I find the main thing about practicing and integrating new ideas is to enjoy the process, to stay in the process. All of these ideas were developed sort of with a spirit of experimentation and a spirit of having fun. I was just enjoying, what I was doing, and the feeling of accomplishment that I get from being able to do some of these things is reward enough within itself. It doesn't really matter if people like it. In the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that this may not be the kind of music that you're going to find on pop records that someone's going to get rich playing. But I get a sense of accomplishment from it, and that's the most important thing for me. And I know that it's my intentions are to push the art of drumming forward, and that is a wonderful reward as well.